What's up, and welcome back to the greatest teacher of all time, where I, Quincy Dawson, interview teachers of color, type their personalities, strategies, and philosophies on education. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and visit greatestteacherofalltime.com to help me support more great teachers like Miss Fullard. What's up, Miss Fullard?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for being here. Real quick, did I say your name correctly?
Fullard, that's
Fullard.
close.
Fullard. There we go. All right, but yeah, thank you so much for being here. You're actually an AP English teacher, so this is gonna be super excited to talk to you.
Cool, I'm ready.
Yeah, let's do it. So, AP English teacher, it's AP season. Real quick, how are you?
um, Probably more stressed than the kids, maybe, but we've worked so hard this year with preparing and how to adjust for a test because I tell them I don't teach them to pass a test, that I teach them and we make a strategic adjustments for a time setting. So it's been crazy around here with just adjusting because our test is next week. And the kids have been doing a lot of practice exams and but they're ready. They may not realize it, but they're ready.
Okay, that's great to hear. Because yeah, full transparency, it's the beginning of May, and you said the test is next week.
Yes, next Tuesday.
Okay, yeah, and I like how you said the strategic planning on time or something like
Yeah.
that, right? I could tell you're an English person because that was like a good phrasing of words to saying we're rushing through.
Oh, well, it's always like if you're running out of time, cut this, cut that, do this, do that. You know what I mean? I just told them on Monday, like we are making our coaching decisions right now on the move. So,
Yeah,
yep.
and you're really doing it. But yeah, of course, when people think of the AP test, you think of, oh yeah, the students are going through so much, they have to learn so much throughout the year. But I want to actually know, like, from the teacher perspective, right? Like, at least for me, when I was teaching AP physics, it's really stressful because you've got these top performing students who are like taking this test to get them into these top performing colleges, and it's a
Mhm.
lot of pressure for us. Are you feeling that?
I do. Thankfully I'm not really at a school where if your scores are lower, where the administration is like, "What are you guys doing?" We don't. I don't have that kind of pressure. I think because I am a perfectionist, maybe, and I want my students to excel. I want to see them get those three, fours, and fives, really fours and fives. And so I just sometimes put my own stress and on my own self, but I'm glad it's not top down. But I really want them to succeed because there's so much writing on it. Last year when we had students get those fours and fives, that took away a couple of their freshman composition courses from the university. So I just want them to be able to save money, save time. So that's kind of where that stress comes from for me.
Okay, well, yeah, you're still doing it despite the stress. And something I saw on your Instagram page, in preparing for the test, I know a lot of teachers do this too, but you would have like these after school study sessions where, I don't know, did you say, or it looked like you were staying late at night? Was that true?
Yes, so we did a mock exam last week, Monday. We stayed till nearly 7 p.m. We did the test exactly as they're going to get it, with an hour for the multiple choice, 2 hours and 15 minutes for the essays, and a break in between. I did feed them after school, so it took a little bit longer. But yeah, we went through the whole shebang just so that on test day they weren't shell shocked by like, oh my goodness, this feels hard. So I wanted to kind of expose them to that so they weren't floundering next week.
Yeah, and man, you were telling me you've been teaching for 17 years, so you definitely have like your dedication and everything for the students. But I guess I'm just curious, staying till 7 o'clock at night, is that worth it? Like you is will that really help the students like doing this practice test like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've scored them and I've given them the feedback. The feedback is what they needed the most, so that they can make those necessary adjustments. And so for me, it was worth it. I love my students, and so staying here after school, with them. The fact that they came and in such large numbers, was huge. So when I see that they're committed to it, it's easier for me to feel like, okay, this is worth it. I can give them more because they want more. So I think if I had a lot of students make excuses about why they couldn't come, I think that maybe might be demoralizing for me, but yeah, it's definitely worth it for sure.
Yeah, I hear that. And it sounds like it's just the dedication coming from both sides, which makes it worth
Mhm.
it. Yeah,
Yep.
that's great. I know these scores are going to prove that too. But yeah, so maybe aside from the mock exams, what AP specific strategies are you doing throughout the year to help them out?
So I there are different ways that teachers kind of structure the class. Some teachers structure it thematically. Some teachers go based on the units that are outlined in College Board. And I do the units. It's just conceptually easier for me to teach it that way. But I always try to do something that is engaging, very hands-on. So throughout the time, we might do debates where they're required to really defend and justify their reasoning. We might have a different kind of debate where they're not allowed to use any fallacies because sometimes, they tend to do that. We did a March Madness with thesis statements and the brackets, and we had a competition. So I do a lot of, just fun activities so that it's not, we hardly do book work. But it's not just come in, sit down, I'm talking. We do a lot of collaboration. I tell them every day you're going to read, write, talk every day. And so that's what we do. We read, we write, we talk, we compare, we collaborate, and we'll do some of those group activities or major class activities.
Okay, yeah, I love that. The read, write, talk. Yeah, that's definitely key in those AP classes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so with me and my experience, so I teach AP physics. In high school, I was not good at math or anything like that, but I was in the AP calculus class for some reason. And one thing that was just dawning on me throughout the whole year is that this is about to be one of the hardest tests I take in my life.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm gonna ask something. I have my answer already, but for you, do you think that AP test is too hard? Because you've taught it for a while, you studied it in college.
Yeah.
Is that test actually hard enough or too hard? Or
The AP language and composition test is super hard. It is super hard. I mean, sometimes when I'm doing the practices, I'm like, "Ooh, well, oh, those answers look really, so I
physics?
know that
Physics was the
it's
exact same way.
yeah, I know that it's tough. The writing the essays under a timed situation, I know that adds another element. And I was telling them that if it weren't for the time factor, I think they would like kill it out the park. But the fact that there is an added element of time, I think that adds to the difficulty of the test because you have to do so much under, a time constraint. I don't know if it's too hard. I mean, it's definitely doable,
Yeah.
but it's challenging for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the thing where it's doable, right? And I don't know, you've been teaching for a while. Can you maybe guess or predict why you think it's under a time constraint or a strict time constraint? Because it's certain portions for certain time limits, correct?
Yeah, the essays are 40 minutes a piece. And the multiple choice is 1 hour. I don't know if I've thought that far about why must it be timed. I guess they'd like to see what that looks like in a pressured situation. Because I mean, as teachers, to get our certification, we had a time test. So there I know that it is like standard procedure with testing under those conditions to see what can a student produce within this time frame when given some sort of stimuli. So I'm assuming that's what it is. And if they're going to get college credit, then I guess it needs to be something that is on par of a collegiate level that demonstrates that level of thinking. So um I'm assuming that's why it is the way it is.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. I think for me growing up, I'll say flat out, the test was too hard for me. But I think I was a different scenario where I honestly don't think my brain was developed enough for the things that I was trying to do in my math, science, English classes. I honestly don't think I was ready at that age. But I
Mhm.
think if you are ready at that age, that test is probably the perfect way to prove, hey, I don't even need these intro classes.
Yeah, but you know
Right.
what the other way I think about it too though is because I tell my students that I'm not, if they don't achieve a level 3, 4, and a 5, that I am okay with that because I know that the level of expectation that I've had for you and the exposure that you've had to high level text and my high standards and expectations, I know that that has developed you as a thinker, as a writer, as a reader. So even if you don't pull it out on test day, I know that you are still, you have grown because of that exposure. So for some students, it's just a matter of exposure and preparation for the next level, as opposed to you getting a level 4 and 5, a score 4 and 5 on your AP assessment. So I don't think you share your experience in high school that was too hard for you. I don't necessarily think that it was too hard. I think it just you had the opportunity to be exposed to high level text, and I think that that's important. Maybe even more important than getting a 4 or 5.
Yeah, I definitely hear that too. And just like how you're saying how the experience in your class is just as good or sometimes even better than getting that 4 or 5 on the test. Because once me and probably your students actually got to their intro level class, you just blow right through it, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I
That's,
remember,
that's the hope.
yeah, I remember calculus in college was pretty easy for me. And that was probably because I took the AP class in high
Right.
school.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, that's what I share because for students to get their score back and they might have a 2, I'm like, hey, when you take your 1101 course next year, you are in a good position. You won't be struggling as some of, your peers might be. So,
Yeah, they'll be out of here. That's great. That's great. And maybe shifting to things that make classes easier or harder. I want to talk about, have you heard of the service called Chegg? They do like the textbook rentals and different tutoring
I
services.
have. I don't know much about it, but I have heard of them.
Okay, yeah, that's where I used to rent all my books from. But actually a few days ago, the CEO came and he was doing some interviews talking about why his stocks have gone down in the company. And basically, they said with their metrics, they see college students typically sign up around March or April during like midterm season, where they can get like 24/7 access to live tutoring, right? If they pay a small fee.
Mhm,
They noticed that they didn't get as many signups. And that
mhm,
was because of different services like ChatGPT and AI services, where you just take a picture of your assignment and upload and get the answers,
mhm.
right? So, with that specific issue aside, I want to know from you as an English teacher, how do you think like things like AI or ChatGPT can be used in schools?
Um, so how it can be used, I haven't thought. So here's
Or
my
so maybe before how it can be used, what are your thoughts on it?
I think that there's good that can come out of it, right? I think for some students it can be good for, it reminds me almost like of a Wikipedia, where I might go to Wikipedia and get some background, but that is not my source, right? So I used Chat GPT when I was going to Texas and preparing for, like, where should I go, what sites should I see, and looking that up. But as I think about it in school, I know that some students, they just got that temptation to use whatever Chat GPT says as their own work. And so it definitely has forced me to be more creative in my assignments and in my projects. And in just really just the way I do my class. I hardly do essays, take home essays anymore. Um, what I'm thinking of as I'm actually talking to you, this just came to my head, is to put in a prompt in Chat GPT and have students score it with the AP rubric. And so
That
I'm
is genius.
thinking,
That is
because
that is genius. I love that.
yeah, what I think what they'll realize is, even though it spits out a lot of information in a really short period of time, that it's not meeting up to the standard or the level of what the rubric for the AP course is requiring of students. And so I think that would be an eye opener for them to realize, like, okay, I might get some information, but there is still a lot of ambiguity and vagueness that cannot be achieved based on the rubric. So, I'm thinking about that. I've had to change my whole project for their independent reading project and make it something that you cannot use AI with this. It
So
just won't work.
so wait, did you do that because you saw it as an issue, or you're trying to preventively do something about it? Like, was it already a
Um,
problem, then you switched, or are you just looking
a
forward?
little of both, a little of both. So there are times, after reading so much of my students' writing since August, I know how students write, students in my class. And so if I read something that sounds like, wow, that's really sophisticated that I've never seen from you before, and it wasn't a gradual growth to sophistication, it was like sophistication, wow. I'll enter it in. Now there have been times when I Chat GPT said I wrote this, and I, ask the student about it, we talk about it. And sometimes it's from my students that I would trust with my life. So, and I know you can't put things past students sometimes, but there are some ones that, and in the teacher groups that I've been in, that have said that sometimes Chat GPT is wrong when it claims that something was written by them and not. So, to avoid all of that, I created a project for them for their independent reading book that they just couldn't get off of Chat GPT. They just couldn't get it.
And I love that. To me, that is a sign of a phenomenal teacher, right? Because I remember when the pandemic started and everyone had to like start teaching online, teachers were like panicking about it, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do my lessons? But to me, I was like, no, this is great. This is going to challenge us to think differently about how we teach.
Mhm.
And I feel like this AI thing is doing the exact same thing and challenging the great teachers to just change the way they teach.
It is. It is. It's definitely pulling out my creativity. I'm like, what can I do that still meets the skills of this course, but they couldn't plug it in and just get something. So
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And maybe so that's how the student side, but I want to bring up this tweet I saw from someone named Daniel Ahmad. And it says, I showed my mom, a teacher, how ChatGPT could potentially be used by her students to cheat. She's now using it to put together lesson plans, come up with better ways to teach, and fill gaps in her knowledge. So, hearing something like that, do you see yourself using ChatGPT or any type of AI to do things differently?
I don't. I actually, in a teacher group that I'm in, I saw something similar where teachers were like, "Wow, this made my lesson plans for the whole week," But I just as what I saw when you plug in a prompt and it's not quite thorough. I think it's going to be the same thing when it comes to a lesson plan. I think there's going to be a lot of things missing that need to be there. And then I also think lesson plans are good when you know your students. And so I develop a lesson based on me knowing my kids, whereas AI doesn't know my kids. Chat GPT doesn't know them. And so, you might be able to spit out like a generic lesson plan, or maybe even get ideas from, but I wouldn't say that that is going to be an ideal lesson plan that I can implement with these students sitting right in front of me, because they don't know the students sitting right in front of me.
Yeah, and I think that also just shows the value of a real life human teacher.
Right.
Right. I remember when the pandemic started, there were teacher groups saying, like, yeah, make sure not to upload your lesson plans to so and so website because they're going to have a robot replace you next year. But, like, nah, that lesson is good for 2019, 2020. That's not good for now. Like, it changes every year.
Yeah, it does. It does, because the students change every year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Man, we've talked a lot. But now I want to get into maybe more lighter subject. What is your favorite thing about teaching English? You said you've been doing this for 17 years now?
Yes. My favorite thing about teaching, it's tough because my favorite thing about teaching isn't even really teaching. It's really, relationships with my students. But if I had to think about my favorite thing about teaching English, it is when we're reading something that is so powerful that we can connect to and have great conversations about, that is just, it's priceless. We've read Just Mercy this year, which is, has been made into a movie, but it really opened students' eyes about the inequities in the criminal justice system and just so many flaws that exist. And I think students had like a philosophical knowledge of it, but I think when they got to actually read Bryan Stevenson's argument and really see facts and things for themselves, it just really opened up a lot. So the awareness that was discovered with the books that we read and the passages that we read, for me, was just priceless.
Yeah, that's great. And with that, man, I guess it's kind of hard with your AP classes, but are you able to like have any creativity or freedom in the books that they read? Or
Yes, I choose everything, and that's why I love it. So, as long as you're able to teach those skills that College Board is requiring, which are the same skills that they'll be assessed on, you can do that with any piece of text. Now, it's nonfiction, so but you do that with any nonfiction text. And so we really read. We're going to be doing our fourth book starting next week.
wow, that's great.
Mhm.
And is it the same thing where like again we're talking about the lesson plan from last year isn't good this year because the students are different. Are the books the same? Do you switch up your books based on the students and the year and what's going on?
I switch up the books. It's not so much because of the students, but sometimes I think like maybe there's a hot topic going on in society, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna shift gears to this book because this is a hot topic right now, and I think this book, they'll be more interested in it. So it really just depends. It might depend on the students, but it could also depend on what's happening in society. Or if students, so I usually get feedback from my students. This year they read a book called Nickel and Dimed. They hated it. They absolutely hated it. But the whole point of it was, so they can see a researcher's um, she went undercover to show how America, you can't get by economically, with minimum wage. But they just didn't like the methodology of the journalist. So I get feedback from my students, and so next year I'm not going to do nickel and dimes because I can totally understand where they're coming from with the issues that they had with it. There are other books that I have that can accomplish the same goal, with that topic. So I switch it up depending on a number of factors.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so interesting because Nickel and Dimed is a super old book,
It
right?
is. It
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So I'm sure like the generational shifts were like, okay, what may be interested to one generation, the next is not
Yeah.
feeling that at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
That is so interesting to hear.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you hear about these timeless tales, but that's not always the case.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for this, Miss Fullard. You're doing so much in your classroom. Thank you for talking to me about you doing your different strategies for these AP classes, what you think about the new AI systems, how you switch up your books every year. They're all part of the reasons why I think you might be one of the greatest teachers of all time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you deserve it. You deserve it. And thanks to Transcendence Children Family Services, we'd actually like to give you this $100 prepaid gift card. Choose with you or your students or anything you choose.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. And also, with the support of Everyday Educate, we'd actually like to sponsor one of your classes with a class pizza party.
For real?
For real, for real.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Of course, of course. You deserve it. Your classroom deserves it. All of it.
Thank you
But
so
yeah,
much.
yeah. So once the cameras go off and everything, I'll get your address and figure out how to get those pizzas delivered to your classroom.
Okay.
All right. Thank you to everyone else for watching The Greatest Teacher of All Time, where I interview teachers of color to highlight their personalities, strategies, and philosophies on education. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And if you really liked it, leave a comment for me and Ms. Fullard to see. Also, if you are the greatest teacher of all time, or if you know the greatest teacher of all time, let me know. Go to greatestteacherofalltime.com and click on Submit a Teacher. Hope to see you soon.